I'm not on my I'm not on my usual machine either, but welcome everyone. And it is wonderful to hold this webinar with Archbishop Ian. I think we're privileged to have this webinar because Archbishop Ian is about to retire and to go back to Mauritius with Kamala, his wife. I last saw him in York when he came on behalf of the Anglican Centre. But since then, we have had a Christians Aware group in Rome as part of our programme, and they went as guests of the Anglican Centre. The leader of our group in Rome was Beverly Lott, and she will welcome Archbishop Ian now. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me and see me?
We can.
Yes, we can.
Lovely to be here, and good evening, Archbishop. For 8 members of Christians Aware, this meeting with Archbishop Ian Ernest has a particular resonance because on Monday this week, we returned from a week-long pilgrimage to Rome, seeking and deepening ecumenical encounters. 6 of us travelled from England, 2, Anthony Das and Shampa Roy, from Kolkata in India, where they work devotedly for the Trinita project. Our first full day saw us attending the lunchtime Eucharist at the Anglican Centre, followed by the hospitality of the buffet lunch shared with the Anglican Centre team, including Associate Priest, the Reverend Jim Linthicum, His Grace the Archbishop, and Kamala, his wife. Young students, no, they're not young students, although they could pass for young students, but we also encountered young students currently completing courses in Rome and a substantial New Zealand Maori group who treated us after lunch to Maori songs and the accompanying body movements, which we tried to imitate. In cooperation with the Anglican Centre, we were able to attend subsequently meetings with Father Martin Brown at the Dicastery for the Promotion of Christian Unity, the Reverend Matthew Lafferty at the Methodist Ecumenical Office, and Dr. Monica Atias, who heads up the remarkable Sant'Egidio project that works in Trastevere with refugees and asylum seekers. Archbishop Ian and Father Martin Brown saw to it that we had very good tickets for the papal audience last Wednesday, where we were able to hear the gospel reading and Pope Francis' message to the pilgrims gathered in St. Peter's Square in English, Spanish, Italian, French, German, Polish, and Arabic, all in glorious sunshine, and with an audience made up in large part by groups of schools and colleges from all over the world, also priests celebrating significant anniversaries of ordination, and newly married couples who had redonned their finery to be there and receive a papal blessing. A fortuitous meeting at the Anglican Centre was with Larry, a New Yorker now resident in Rome, who not only accompanied us to the right bus on the Largo Argentina, incidentally where Julius Caesar was assassinated, to get to our dicastery meeting, but mentioned the Sunday morning Eucharist at St. Paul's Within the Walls, the American Episcopalian Church in Rome, where he is church warden. We duly went along and enjoyed not only the service in a church built in 1873 and decorated with Burne-Jones wall tiles. We heard the wonderful sermon by the Reverend Jonathan Denson. We shared coffee in the church garden and a wonderful fellowship at the church, which continued when we joined members of the congregation at a lunch set up by Church Warden Larry at the Quirinale Hotel, very close to the Quirinale Palace and the historical centre of Rome with the Trevi Fountain, Spanish Steps, and everything that you will know if you've been to that part of Rome. And if you've watched a few films like La Dolce Vita and Roman Holiday. Archbishop Jan, we thank you for the hospitality we enjoyed at the Anglican Centre, and for all you and your administrator Nikki did to put in place the many encounters for us in Rome, which, if I am typical of our group, are still echoing and reverberating in our hearts and minds, and which we shall long remember. So now we look forward to your talk very much about the life and work of the Anglican Centre in Rome. Thank you, Archbishop Jan.
Good evening to everyone, and thank you for your presence. And Beverly, thank you for your kind words. We were indeed very glad to welcome you and organize your visit here in Rome. And we also remember with fondness your presence here at the different moments we've had. We also, I don't know whether I heard you properly, but you also came for the prayer group meeting on Thursday, where since I've been here, we have now a group of ecumenical officers, whether from the Reformed Church, the Methodists, the Lutherans, the Church of Scotland. We all meet here every Thursday to pray together, and it's been on for the past 4 years, and we were glad to have you with us. But I wish to apologize because I had to leave you because I was involved in one of the Lambeth webinar following the Lambeth course on that day. Thank you very much for your kind invitation to so that I be able to share with you the life, the work, and the commitment of the Anglican Centre. But I've got some news to share with you first. I was in London. I just came this evening, and I had the privilege to attend the annual lecture of the UK Friends at Westminster Abbey, during which His Excellency Chris Trott, the British Ambassador to the Holy See, spoke about the collaboration he has with the Anglican Centre in the work he does here, the diplomatic work he does. And it is good to note that there's a lot of collaboration with different diplomatic missions here in Rome for the sake of Christian unity, but also for the sake of working together in order to address issues that we face: migration and human trafficking, climate change issues. So we do work together. And at the same time, at Westminster Abbey on Monday, we had the privilege of welcoming the new director, Bishop Anthony Ball. It was a moment like passing a baton during that time where we were able to welcome the new director, and at the same time there was a moment of a sort of farewell being offered to me. It was quite an emotional moment, but I have to say it's been also for me a very sad week, because on Tuesday I had an appointment with the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the moment that I met with him at noon, he had just signed the decree for his resignation. Have been his collaborator for the past 5 years. I've been working closely with him. He's given me this mandate to be able to nurture, to develop the the relationship. I won't say ecumenical, but I would say the relationship with the Roman Catholic Church here, and especially with Pope Francis. And so it's been quite a moment of great sadness for me and Camilla, who was with me in London. And when I came back this evening from London, I'm still trying to digest, because it's not easy to just separate oneself from someone with whom you've worked and with whom you've shared a mission. To continue on what I intend to share with you this evening, I would like to quote John Macquarie. Quote, "There is the unity of a common service of and concern for the world, and this practical unity is to a large extent realized now within our existing structures." This statement, written in 1973 by John Macquarie in an article, Anglicanism and Ecumenism, has reminded me on how much it is true of the Anglican Centre in Rome. Over the years, this place of encounter at the heart of Rome has established itself to be known as one where relationships are established, nurtured, developed, and sustained. Friends, as Beverly and the other members of the delegation saw, unity is seen and unity is tasted here in Rome. In the past months, we all have seen and tasted how there is a growth in understanding and cooperation with other Christian institutions and groups. One example is the pilgrimage to Rome of Archbishops during the week of prayer for Christian unity. And during their visit here, they were commissioned at the Vespers, which is being held every year at St. Paul's Basilica outside the walls. And the Archbishop of Canterbury was present, and together with Pope Francis, they commissioned the pair of Catholic and Anglican bishops who are called to work in their respective regions so that they could witness together to the love, to the compassion, and to the mercy of God. And at that, during the Vespers, something important happened, because every year I am with the Pope. I walk together with him. I read a psalm in Italian, but I also share the blessing together with him. What a privilege. But this time, when the Archbishop of Canterbury was present, I still had my role as his representative, but the Pope did something wonderful, which he never does, which he is not supposed to do. He invited the Archbishop of Canterbury to share a word, and this was seen by millions of people from around the world. What a witness of Christian unity we had on that day. And the Anglican Centre, since its establishment, has been able to bring about this visible presence of the Anglican Communion. And this was realized in January this year. And there has been another historic meeting organized by the Anglican Centre of Anglican primates in Rome this year. It was held from the 26th of April to the 3rd of May. And at this meeting, of course, it was done within the prevailing tension of the Anglican Communion, but the Archbishop and the primates were courageous enough to come here at the heart of the Roman Catholic Church here in Rome, to be able to meet, engage with one another, but also to be able to engage with the different people at the Vatican and with Pope Francis himself. And here, every year, we have a pilgrimage on St. Paul's sites. And the one who leads it is Professor Scott Broder from the Gregorian University. And I have asked him whether he could lead a mini pilgrimage for the primates, which he did. And So on St. Paul's site, we went and prayed at the Tre Fontane, the place where St. Paul was beheaded. And we were there for 1 hour, praying, listening to the word, meditating upon the word, and being at the very place where St. Paul was beheaded. And that was a moment of intense prayer, of intense communion amongst the primates. And from there, we went to the place of burial of St. Paul at St. Paul's Basilica. As you may be aware, St. Paul's Basilica is the symbolic place of ecumenism. It was there in 1966 where Paul VI gave his ring to Archbishop Michael Ramsay, then Archbishop of Canterbury. And this gesture of friendship has been nurtured and developed over the years. And today we are definitely relishing the fruit of this friendship started between these two church leaders. And at that event, we were welcomed for tea by Cardinal James Harvey, the archpriest of the Basilica. And we had the Vespers led by the monastic community of the Benedictine community at St. Paul's Basilica, and Cardinal Harvey preached at this evensong. And the next day, we had a visit, like you had, Beverly, to the San Egidio community, where we were able, all the primates were able to see the gracious work, the wonderful work which San Egidio does from around the world on peace, justice, on migrant issues and refugees. We were able to meet with refugees coming from Gaza. And this was a poignant moment of service that we witnessed. And the Archbishop of Jerusalem was able to meet Palestinians who had come and who had been severely marked because they lost their loved ones. And but they were rescued and came to Rome through the service of the San Egidio community. So the primates witnessed to that. And the next day, we had a meeting with Cardinal Mario Kretsch, who is the secretary to the synod. As you are aware, during the month of October, we had the second session of the synod, at which Bishop Stephen Warner was the fraternal delegate. And at this during this time, when Cardinal Kretsch came to speak to us, the archbishops of the Anglican Communion engaged seriously with him, sharing their own experience of the synodal process. And that was a lovely evening of trying to understand how this present synod of the Catholic Church could open new ways of collaboration between our two communions. And I have to say that the ecumenical aspect has been seriously considered and recommended by this present synod, and I am glad for that. So, and the next day we met with the Pope, and for the first time we didn't have an audience with him. We had a teaching from him, and I wrote to his papal household and asked Monsignor Sapienza, instead of having an audience which would last 20 minutes, we would be able, whether we could be able to have a teaching from the Pope. And we had a teaching on the primacy of Peter and Bishop of Rome, which was very interesting. And then we had another 45 minutes of interactive discussion between the Pope and the primates. And many of the primates expressed their own concerns and challenges they face in their own locations, whether it was a region of conflict, a region of religious intolerance. And we heard from the primate of Japan how they catered for people who have been the victims of tsunami. And so it was a very rich discussion. And as we are talking about the Anglican Centre, during the discussion, the Pope just turned to me and said, "My bishop has not spoken today." So this translates in a concrete way the level of friendship, the level of relationship that is being entertained today between Pope Francis and the Anglican Centre. And these events, which I've just described in detail, clearly advocates the need for Christian leaders, irrespective of denominational persuasion, to address in the context they come from world issues that put in peril the longing of Jesus, the Son of God, for a world where unity prevails. The other example comes from the Anglican Centre, whose daily calling is to build bridges which can facilitate conversations and collaborations where unity is not merely a word, but an experience to live in the different aspects of its calling, which is rooted in prayer and learning. Friendly relationships enable us to develop an empirical approach to differences among Christians in this international setting. Beverly just mentioned about the presence of young students at the Tuesday worship, and these young students are doctoral students from Germany. They are from the Lutheran Church, and they told me when they come to the Anglican Centre, they find a freshness here in this very place, because they told me that the spiritual atmosphere in Rome is at times very heavy, but when they come to the Anglican Centre, it's quite of a refreshing time they have with us. So I have to say that it continues to bring people together from different linguistic. If you watch on the live streaming from on our Facebook page on Tuesday, you would see that the readings are in French, in Spanish, in German, and we had also one in Urdu, because we have had people from Pakistan as volunteers here. So it is a place, friends, that values the witness of the early Christians, as their legacy help us to be instruments of grace for the transformation of hearts and minds. Though that we are living through enriching moments of communion with other brothers and sisters of other churches, we still face ongoing ambiguities involved in theological dialogue that need to be addressed with an enduring patience. There is also the challenge of managing an English charitable institution within an Italian legal framework, which at times can restrain the implementation of some decisions which are crucial for the good running of the ACR. As we seek to promote a greater engagement for ecumenical reception, the prevailing tensions in the Anglican Communion is another source of great concern to us, as our ecumenical partners have some difficulties in understanding the notion of authority as it is understood and lived in our communion. But I am hopeful that the meeting of Anglican primates in Rome, held a few months ago, will emerge as a highly significant moment in our relationship with the Church of Rome. In his address to the primates, Pope Francis urged us to be aware that our differences do not diminish the importance of the things that unite us. These words, together with those of the primate of the Church of Ireland, Archbishop John McDowell, I quote, "While continuing to acknowledge our many differences, The warmth of the relationship between the Anglican Communion has deepened in every way, and the meeting with Pope Francis was another example of the closeness of that relationship. It shows the importance of how a relationship, if nurtured, developed, can be of great relevance to our quest of responding to the longing of Christ, that they all may be one. The Anglican Centre in Rome has certainly been instrumental in its long journey of 58 years of sustaining this relationship. This unique, I like to say that because it is unique, this ecumenical institution of the Anglican Communion, is the fruit born from the seeds sown by those whose passion for unity between our two churches never altered. And as a result and response to the Second Vatican Council, our presence in Rome is set as a ray of light in the eternal city, as our primary calling is to sustain the development of the relationship between the Vatican and Canterbury by assuming an ambassadorial role. 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege and honor to meet with the Secretary of State upon the request of the Archbishop of Canterbury to discuss with him on how the Anglican Communion and the Roman Catholic Church could engage together while facing the sad issue that we have in Gaza and Lebanon at this moment. So the Anglican Centre has definitely a serious ambassadorial role to assume. And this is exalted through collaborative initiatives and active presence when required. These give flesh to our intentions to build up the unity of the Church. Friends, with this long introduction, may I now highlight the work which is being done by our institution. First one is the John Moorman Library. When I came here 5 years ago, I was sad to note that this library is not used at all, that the gems and treasures that we possess are not being valued. So we thought that would be good to highlight these gems and treasures. So we organized last year an exhibition which had an ecumenical component to it. We had the collaboration of the Centro Pro Unione and the Venerable English College. It had also an international perspective to it. We had artists working with us from Virginia Theological Seminary and from the Diocese of Dallas. And we had young volunteers who had come here for a period of time to study in Rome, young seminarians from England. They also participated with us, and we were able to really widen the scope of collaboration so that we could really highlight the treasures we have here. And this was done in collaboration with the Lambeth Palace Library and the Gladstone Library. And we have now a digital online, I would say, code, which enable us to see the exhibition. And our objective is to expand international remote access to exhibition, thereby offering the wealth of resources housed in the John Moorman Library to an even global audience. And since then, people are interested to come and use the library. And our intention, I hope that my successor will be able to do so, is to widen the scope of collaboration with the Centro Pro Unione and the Venerable English College so that we could then initiate an online resource of the library, which could be used by international institutes of theology, whether Catholic, Anglican, or any other denomination. I gave a prominent place during my mandate to the John Moorman Library because it promotes the Anglican Centre's missional ventures within the Anglican Communion. And I'm glad to say that now we have a collaboration with the Department of Ecumenical Studies of St. John Lateran University, Pontifical University, and through Dr. Jerry Willen, the director of the Ecumenical Studies of the Gregorian University. They are now interested to use the resources we have at the John Moorman Library. I do hope that this venture will continue to flourish, and I do hope that the library will be developed. We are not an academic institution, but we are a place of learning and of study. The second thing is the celebration of the Eucharist and Lenten meditations. Every Tuesday, now we are more than 35 people attending regularly the worship, and we have also more than 800 people following us online and react to the worship and the sermon which is preached here. And the time of fellowship during lunch gives, as Beverly was saying, gives opportunity for us to share the richness that we could entertain as Christians here and be a wonderful witness of God's love to the world. We have now the joy of welcoming cardinals to preach to us. And last one was the Secretary of State himself, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. We had also the former nuncio to England, to Great Britain, who is now a cardinal, Cardinal Gugerotti, Claudio Gugerotti. And in December, we shall have the new secretary of the Dicastery for Promoting Christian Unity, Archbishop Flavio Pace. And the Tuesday Eucharist is definitely opening itself to the world and welcoming the prelates from the Catholic Church and other church leaders who visit Rome, or other ecumenical leaders here in Rome. And we also organize Lenten meditations. And this year I chose two young theologians, Father Jonathan Denson and Reverend Allison, who have been able to lead us during the Lenten meditation. She's from the Methodist Church, and Father Jonathan was a Roman Catholic monk who is now considering to become an Anglican priest. I also visit some places. I went to Sicily, to Palermo, to Catania, meeting with the different archbishops and of the church, the Roman Catholic Church in Sicily, and work with the Knights of the Order of Saint Lazarus of Jerusalem, and I went to Pakistan in February, because we have had a young Pakistani woman to whom the Anglican Centre gave a scholarship, a one-year scholarship to study at the Angelicum, that is the St. Thomas Aquinas Pontifical University. And she had done very, very well. And I was then invited to Pakistan by the moderator, and we were able to enjoy the hospitality of the people from the interfaith group, but also from other Christian denominations. And I was given a prominent place to speak about the mission and the vision and the mission of the Anglican Centre, and had the joy also of being able to help the Pakistani church to know of the work that is being done here in Rome, so that they could be encouraged to work together in a context where the church is being persecuted. So the role of the Anglican Centre is not limited to the boundaries of Rome. it crosses the boundaries. And this vision and mission initiated by John Moorman and Archbishop Michael Ramsey and their successors are proving to bear fruits today. We have also, as I was saying, collaboration with pontifical and other ecumenical institutions. I've been teaching at the St. John Lateran University, Pontifical University, on Anglican enculturation, and my teachings have been published. And I also participated in a forum with l'Institut Catholique de Paris, the Catholic Institute in Paris, where my presentation has now been published. And so even in the French, I would say, Catholic institutes, the Anglican Centre is now present, and the richness of the Anglican communion is widely shared. As I mentioned also at the beginning, we have some good relationships with the diplomatic corps on peace and justice issues, on the migrants and refugees. We have had an exhibition here about the problems, the issues which refugees face here in Italy. We were able to do that in collaboration with Miss Fiona Kendall, who's from the Church of Scotland and the director of the Protestant Federation taking care of the refugees. We also have this pilgrimage of St. Paul sites, which attracts more than 25 people every year from around the world. We spend around 4 days together following St. Paul. We have a Jewish dimension. We visit the synagogue. We have a talk from a rabbi, and then we have the context in which Paul lived, the pagan context. And we also visit the different places where Paul has been preaching, where he was in house arrest. So the Anglican Centre is also promoting the importance of Paul here in Rome. And the synodal experience is one which has really had an impact on me, because I have been able to be present at some of the sessions. I've been given documents to study, and we had here a few weeks ago a lunch working session with the fraternal delegates from the Western churches, together with Cardinal Kretsch and officers from the Dicastery for Promoting Christian Unity. It gave us the opportunity to listen to the fraternal delegates from the Reformed churches, including the Anglican Communion, so that the people responsible for the synodal process in the Catholic Church could listen to the assessment made by the fraternal delegates. The challenges we face, as I am leaving in a few months' time, there is a strong resistance to ecumenism from the younger generation. Catholic ordinants here in Rome are not interested. Many of them are not interested in establishing any ecumenical relationships. So, and it will be good to note that because of the prevailing tensions in the communion, and because of women's ordination, and also the ordination of women to the episcopate is also causing some tension. So we've got to listen, we've got to share, but it is done with a good spirit of understanding. And the other thing which I think which is important is that we should not work towards building up relationship for the cause of Christian unity as mere fantasies. It has to be grounded in a real and living relationship with Christ. This has been the foundational aspect of my ministry here in Rome. Without prayer, it would have been difficult for me to be able to sustain the vision and the mission of this place. So the Anglican Centre is not only an institution, but a living body of people whose passion and interest is to bring into realization the prayer of our Lord Jesus Christ, that they all be one. May I thank you for your kind attention.
Archbishop Ian, thank you very much indeed. I've nothing to add to what you have to say, except perhaps to say a little bit of my life story. I was born and brought up outside Dublin as a member of the Church of Ireland. There was no contact between the two Roman Catholic Church, obviously in a Roman Catholic country. In those days, indeed, there was almost fear between us. My father, who was an Englishman, did a little bit by trying to share worship and have carol services between the Roman Catholic Church and our church in our part of Dublin. But the great break for me was that memorable moment in Canterbury Cathedral where Archbishop Robert Runcie knelt with Pope John Paul II. And I collapsed at that moment, absolutely wept. I could never believe that that could happen from my background. And then that was in my late 20s. And then when I got into my 30s, I had the fortune, or maybe not, to join Christians Aware. And then my eyes were opened, of course, even further. Thanks to our dear friend, John Bennett, who you know, who's a colleague of mine as a trustee of Christians Aware and a dear friend. Of course, I've now got to become familiar with the Anglican Centre. I frequently try to attend your worship on a Tuesday morning. It was wonderful to actually be there on Tuesday last week. I can't tell you how moved I was by the week. I'm trying to hold back the tears. It was quite extraordinary, being in the Anglican Centre, meeting all the people there, meeting a young Lutheran woman, for example, over lunch, and going back for that time of prayer on Thursday. Very movingly meeting Father Martin Brown at the dicastery, because, of course, he is an Irishman. He is a member of the community at Glenstall Abbey. He's a Benedictine. I used to go to Mass at Glenstall Abbey during lockdown because it was at 10 o'clock. And our worship online in my benefice here in York wasn't until 12. And then meeting Matthew Rafferty and so on. But standing in St. Peter's Square, I'd never been to Rome before, during and after the papal audience was quite extraordinary. Your work is amazing, and you know, one is so grateful. But I must say that it means that people like me and others, we must try to do what you've been doing in Rome, in our locality, in our parish life. And I feel that is very, very important. In England, we don't do anything like enough, in my view, as Anglicans, so often to mix with, be aware of other communities, Christian denominations in our area, particularly Roman Catholics. That, of course, is not always true. And for a time, I lived in Milton Keynes, where, of course, they have a church which is Roman Catholic, as well as a part of the other denominations. And I worshipped there for a time. But I do think trickle down is not easy, but I think that we need to be part of that trickle down and have the courage to go to Mass from time to time, to talk to people afterwards, and have the courage to, not just when we're on our knees on Maundy Thursday, thinking of St. John's Gospel, that, to love one another and all that, but to actually carry that out. But all I've got to say now is, because I spoke to you at lunch, and I wish you well. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I wish you well on your lovely island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, where you, Pamela, I hope will have a very happy retirement with your own children, but very particularly your grandchildren. You deserve that, and we wish you well. So thank you very much indeed, Archbishop.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.